Here are my favorite isometric stretches for the shoulder. And what is an isometric stretch? Well, we might think of it as like an active stretch. And a little more specifically, in an isometric stretch, we stretch a muscle or a muscle group, and then we contract or engage the muscle or the muscle group in the stretch. So for example, let's say we're talking about the hamstrings and we do a little half split here. So here I have stretched the hamstrings and then I would hold this position and then I would actively kick my leg down into the floor. And by pushing down through this heel, I would actually engage or activate my hamstrings while they are in a lengthened position. So that's all an isometric stretch is. It just means that you stretch a muscle and then you activate that muscle in the stretch. In today's video, we will look at isometric stretching specifically for the shoulder. And this is a selection of stretches that will really target the shoulder all the way around, so in a really well-rounded manner. Okay, let's turn our attention to our first shoulder isometric stretch. All right, our first shoulder stretch is an isometric stretch in a position of shoulder flexion. So shoulder flexion is when the arms are up overhead. And here's what this isometric stretch looks like. So it's a variation of half dolphin, and that's a pose that you may know. I'll show just a regular half dolphin setup first, and then I'll explain how we'll make it an isometric. But here is good old half dolphin. I bring my elbows up onto yoga blocks. You could also skip the blocks, just have your elbows on the floor. But I personally really like the blocks. They give a little extra space. And they make the isometric work, I feel, a little more potent. So anyway, half dolphin, elbows on the blocks. I scoot my knees back, and what I'm aiming for is hips pretty much right over knees here. And then once I find that, you could stay here, or to increase the stretch, just allow your chest to move toward the floor. And that pulls your arms, your shoulders into more flexion. So this is a stretch here. I am in shoulder flexion. I am stretching. It's really the posterior shoulder muscles. It's muscles that perform shoulder extension when they contract, like our lats, teres major. Those are some of those muscles, but our shoulder extensor muscles, they are stretched in shoulder flexion. And so we put them in that lengthened position. And then if we were just to hold half dolphin the way we typically see it, like in a yoga setting, it's generally a passive stretch, which is excellent. But today we're interested in isometric stretches. So here's how we turn it into an isometric stretch. We come into the exact same position. It's still good old half dolphin, and this won't look like anything really from the outside, but what I'll do is I'll start to push my elbows down into the yoga block. So I am actively pushing it down now. And as I'm doing that, even though the outside shape doesn't really change that much, my inside experience is much different. So now I'm in the same position, but these stretched muscles are actively working. They are trying to pull my arm down into shoulder extension. They're the shoulder extensors, but they won't go, the arm doesn't go anywhere because I'm in the position. That's what makes this an isometric stretch, because an isometric contraction is a muscle contraction in which no movement happens. Our second shoulder isometric stretch is for the position of shoulder extension. So we just looked at half dolphin, which is an isometric stretch in shoulder flexion. Now we're looking at like a complementary stretch, which is a stretch into shoulder extension. So flexion, extension. This is what this stretch looks like. We come into this seated position, feet out in front, knees bent, and then bring your hands back behind you. And fingers can point just wherever is comfortable for your body. I'm just gonna kind of have my fingers out to the sides here. So with my arms back behind me, I have placed my shoulders into extension. So this is that position of extension. My hands are down on the floor. And then it's great to think about embodying a tall spine here. So we're not like in a round, but try to just have a tall spine. And then we hang on to that. And now in this position of shoulder extension, I will start to drag my hands forward. And once again, it doesn't necessarily look like a lot from the outside. The position stays the same, like as if I were just here passively. But I am starting to engage and contract. Now it's the anterior shoulder muscles. It's the shoulder flexor muscles, the ones that would perform shoulder flexion when they're working. But here I've parked my arms back in shoulder extension, and my arms can't go anywhere because my hands are stuck down to the floor. And especially if you have your hands like on your sticky mat, that helps, that creates more friction so that they don't just float up overhead. They stay where they are. But you're here and then you drag your hands forward. So all of this stuff in the front that likes to lift the arm up, it is stretched here. And then we start to contract all of that same stuff in the lengthened position. Our third isometric stretch is for shoulder abduction. And this will be a variation of a simple side bend. So we probably all know like our simple seated side bend. I'm a big fan of this pose, but this is a passive stretch for like the arm in abduction, and also of course the spine is in lateral flexion. But today we're focused on isometric shoulder stretches. So we will turn our classic seated side bend into an isometric stretch. And this is how we do that. We'll use a yoga strap or just a similar household item like a necktie or a belt or something. If you have a strap, you might like to place a little loop at the end of it, but that's not necessary. But I just kind of like that because I can kind of hook my hand inside. Then I will slide my hand out to the side. So I'm holding onto the strap or I've hooked the strap. And in sliding out, that is naturally pulling me into my side bend. So I'm already in a side bend for the spine, but I have not added the shoulder yet. So here's how we do that. We just hold the strap and swing our arm forward and up, coming into that position of shoulder abduction. And we just want to find the place where we feel a stretch. We start to feel a stretch here. So to like the underside, it's really like the medial side of the shoulder, if you think about it from anatomical position. So these muscles that live here on the underside, they will be stretched in shoulder abduction. So I come into my side bend, I swing my arm up. And then if you're not quite feeling a stretch for those shoulder muscles, simply walk your hand down your strap until you start to find that stretch. So feeling for some sensation here along the outer shoulder. And then once we find that, here's how we make this an isometric. So now that my hand is grounded on the strap, so the strap won't go anywhere, now I can hold my side bend, but I start to pull up on that strap. And then once again, it doesn't look very different from the outside, but I certainly feel it on the inside. I am trying to pull up on that strap, and these muscles that I have lengthened, they're all stretched here. They are contracting and they are trying to pull the arm down and into back, like they're trying to adduct the arm back toward midline because that's what they do. That's what their function is. But they don't succeed in making movement happen because I'm anchored. And again, that's what makes this an isometric stretch. It's muscle contraction with no movement happening. And I'm focused in that lengthened position. So this is really maybe my favorite of the isometric stretches we'll look at today for the shoulder. And I think that you might love it too. Okay, let's look at our last couple of isometric stretches. And these will be for the back side of the shoulder and the front side of the shoulder. And I'm just going to show them back to back because they're so complementary. Let's look at the stretch for the back side of the shoulder first. So this will be an isometric version of eagle arms, which we probably know from yoga, Garudasana arms. Eagle arms is something like this, where you intertwine your arms. And if this doesn't work for our shoulder range of motion, we can also, instead of bringing the hands like this, we can also give ourselves a hug. So very similar position, but just without the hands touching. Either one of these will be great for putting a really good stretch all along here, across the posterior shoulder and the back of the heart. And so anytime we do our eagle arms in yoga, it's a great passive stretch for the back side of the shoulders. But today we're talking about isometric stretching and actually activating the muscles that we're stretching. So all we have to do in our eagle arms to make this an isometric is to simply keep our arms right where they are. So we'll hold them in place, and then we start to try to pull our arms apart. So once again, as with all of these stretches, it doesn't look like much from the outside. You can't really see it too well happening, but I can totally feel it. So I hold the stretch and I'm trying to do this, but my arms won't go anywhere because they're interlocked here. Whether I've got eagle arms or whether I'm giving myself a hug, either way, I can hold my arms in place as I try to pull them wide. So that is what our isometric shoulder stretch is for the back side of the shoulders. And I said we were going to look at back side of shoulder and then front side of shoulder. So now let's turn our attention to the front side. So kind of the complementary type stretch. So for this, you may be familiar with something called like a wall stretch or a doorway stretch, where we would bring our arm roughly into like a goalpost arm shape, place it at the wall, or you could also do this in a doorway, like with the doorway here and your arms on either side. But we're here, and then we start to turn away from our arm, and that will start to lengthen the front of the shoulder and the pecs, like this area. So this is really classic, and it's generally done as a passive stretch like I'm doing it right now. It's great. But if we want to turn this into an isometric, here's a great way that I like. And this is really relevant in a yoga setting because it doesn't always work for everybody to get up and use the wall, just depending on the flow of your class and where you are in the moment. But this version, this isometric version of like that wall stretch is great because we can all just do it right on the mat. So here is what this looks like. So you remember it's that goalpost position to target here. Here we will do it in a prone position on the floor. So I come down, face down, and I bring my arm into the goalpost position. And with my other hand, I just place it out to the side. In fact, why don't I show it more like this? Let's say I'm now going to goalpost my left arm. So I'm going to target that side. Then I place my right hand just somewhere that I can use to push with, basically. So I'll just place my hand wherever. It gives me a nice stable position, strong feeling position so I can push. And so here, instead of being completely face down, which wouldn't really be too much of a stretch, I actually start to turn my chest away from that left shoulder, that goalpost shoulder. And in turning away, this is like the equivalent of being up at the wall, being starting here and then starting to turn away in order to bring on that stretch sensation. So it's this is what it looks like when we stand, but this is what it looks like if we turn this into a prone stretch. So we goalpost the arm, use the other hand to turn us away. Then once you find the place where here, like on the left pecs, you start to feel your stretch, we could hold it here, but then again, this would be a passive stretch, the way that we more typically see it. But today we want this to be isometric, right? So here's what we do. We find the position, we find the stretch, and now my goalpost arm, this arm, the left arm, I will start to push that arm down into the floor. I'm trying to push down. But of course, I won't go anywhere. I'm held right here in the position. But in that push down, I am now asking these muscles here to work in that lengthened position because they're the ones that are doing that action that I'm trying to make happen. So it's a great isometric stretch. I have lengthened anterior shoulder and the pecs. They're in a stretch, but now I'm asking them to work by pushing down through this arm. So that wraps up all of these shoulder isometric stretches that I wanted to share with you today. And if you happen to try any of them or put all of these together into like one full isometric shoulder practice, I'd love to hear what you think and what your shoulders have to say to you after you give them this really good attention. So feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you appreciated this content, subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date on all of the tips that I share.